Okay, so in our last video, we talked about our big envelope shape and how to cut into it a little bit. And in this video, what we're going to do is learn how to take this bottom part, this straight line on our envelope that I have over here, and we're going to push out a little bit. So we're going to use a similar method. If I want to push this out, I still want to use simplification. I want to be using a straight line and the smallest number of straight lines I can get away with. And I want each line to be as long as possible. So when I have a curve, you know, it's always a tricky thing. But I kind of see here, if I look really carefully, that there's almost a point that he's made where that would be a good breaking point of the curve. So what I'm going to do is say that I'm going to use two lines, and right there at that point that I can just barely see on my original bark plate is going to be where that line breaks. So I'm going to make a line that comes down here and then comes down to this point on the bottom of the wrist that I've already found. So I'm taking this one very straight line that I started with here as part of our envelope, and I'm now breaking it into two lines. And not only am I breaking it into two lines, but instead of going inside the envelope, I'm pushing it outside the envelope. Now, I'm going to find these lines the same way I found all my other lines. I'm going to extend this first line here to the edge of my notional space box. This should look really familiar to you all by now. I'm seeing that it's hitting just a little bit higher than this other point of reference, so I'm just going to double check that. So it's actually hitting where my horizontal line is. And then I'm going to measure from the bottom of my notional space box over and make a reference point. I'm just going to double check. Okay, and then I'm just going to take that line angle and make sure that that line angle makes sense over here. It appears to make sense. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that line. Again, that line wasn't very straight, so I'm going to try again. It's a very thin piece of eraser. So let's try that again. And this. All right, so I have this first part of my line. Now I can do the same thing. I said that I was going to simplify all this information into one line. I already know where that bottom point is. It's a point that we found before. So now I just need to extend that line until it hits my notional space box. It's hitting my notional space box about there. I'm going to measure from the bottom of my notional space box. Double check my measurement. And check my angle where it's going to. So it's coming down here. That seems to make sense. I'm going to go ahead and throw that angle in. And you can see now that I have, if I go here and then over, that I'm now showing that curve with just two very simple straight lines. And I'm going to do the same thing I did in our last video. I'm going to kind of clean up the parts of the lines I don't need. Okay, so now that I have drawn these follow-through lines all the way from the edge of my notional space box to the edge of my notional space box, I can go ahead and erase back the parts that I don't need. In this case, what I want to keep is this appearance of a curve using straight lines. And so what I don't need are the stuff on the outside of that curve. So I'm just going to kind of erase back this part and this part here. And you can see that now overall I'm really starting to get the shape of my arm. We're going from our big ideas and we're slowly refining them until we get closer and closer to what we have over here. It's important too that it's okay to erase back any of your information on this plate as you need to as well. So I'm just going to kind of clean up a little bit over here. And you know, this was part of my original envelope line. I don't really need that line anymore because I went ahead and made my next biggest line idea. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that construction line. So construction lines are really helpful for helping us put things in the right place, but we often end up erasing them away. Now, some people ask me, why go through all this trouble of drawing the lines all the way through if you're only going to erase them? And there are a few really important reasons to do so. One is that it gets your eye to start following all the way through the piece whenever you're looking at something. And whenever you're referencing, whenever you're drawing, you always want to be referencing the top to the bottom, the left to the right. You always want to be seeing holistically and thinking big about the big ideas. And so by forcing yourself to draw these follow-through lines, it's training your eye to automatically scan all the way across the subject that you're trying to draw. So it's really good training. It's like playing your scales every day on the piano. It's really good training for your eye to always be scanning all the way across the piece and getting your eyes to practice thinking big and seeing big. And then, of course, the other reason that we draw them is that it gives us more reference points so that we can improve the accuracy of our drawing. Okay, so just kind of cleaned up a little bit. I can clean up this part of the follow-through line here as well. And there we go. So now that we have some idea of what our subject is starting to look like, I want to really go through some ways that we can double check our work and be a little bit more accurate and precise in our work. So in our next video, we will be double checking our work.